Hey everyone, it's Ben, and I'm going to shoot a video today to demonstrate how to implement footsteps correctly for our character. Now, we did this in class and something went wrong, so I don't know what it was, but I'm going to just demonstrate it one more time so that you can review it and follow along and do essentially the same thing. So, this is just the third-person template. I'm using Unreal 5.4.4, which is the most recent version, but this should work for all versions of Unreal, even Unreal Engine 4. So I have no idea what was interfering with this yesterday. All right, so if we hit play, there's our character. We're playing as Quinn. She can run, she can jump. And later, I'm going to show you how to make it so that you can have her walk and run. That'll be a little bonus for this video. But you can hear that there's no sound. So what we're going to do, therefore, is point something out to you first. Here in the base content directory is this third-person folder. And inside of there, you'll have another folder that's called Blueprints, which if you open, you're going to find the blueprint. That is the blueprint class for the character. If we double-click this, this is the event graph, and you can see that there's some code in here, or some script, if you want to call it that, that has to do with, giving the character the ability to move and jump and whatnot. We're going to learn a lot more about the event graph and this panel here, which is called components and variables, and the details panel. All of that will come in due time. But one thing that we're interested in particular for this blueprint is to find out what animation blueprint it is using. So if we click on the BP third-person character self, and we go to the right on the details panel, we'll see that the animation mode says use animation blueprint, and the anim class is ABP_Quinn_C. Now, to find that, you can simply hit this little Browse to Asset in Content Browser button. So I'll click that, and that will find it for me and highlight it right there in the content directory. So I can now close this, and here is Quinn's animation blueprint. Another way we can find that, I'll show you how to find it manually. If I go back to the content directory, here in the characters folder, you'll see mannequin UE4. That is for if let's say you're updating an older project and it uses the older mannequin. But here are the mannequins for Unreal Engine 5, and we can open this up. It has its own animations folder. So if I double-click that, you're going to see ABP Manny. ABP stands for Animation Blueprint, and ABP Quinn. So we are playing as Quinn. You can see that there, all right? But if we open up Quinn's animation blueprint, you're going to see a message that says, this is a child AnimBP, child of ABP Manny. That means it uses the logic and graph of another animation blueprint, AnimBP, but can override sequence. That is, sequences are animation sequences. I'll show you what I mean by that in just a few minutes. And blend spaces. These are related. Sequences and blend spaces. You're going to understand that in just a second. So it can override sequence and blend space players in the Asset Override Editor window, which is up here. We're not going to need to use that. Where did I leave off? Child anim BPs are great if you have multiple characters with different animations but want to share logic. If you want to view or edit the anim graph in logic, open ABP Manny. So if I open up ABP Manny, which is this other animation blueprint, it has its own event graph, but it also has something called an anim graph, and we're going to look at that for a second. Now, the Quinn animation blueprint is sharing this information because it is a child of Manny. So what we have are these things called state machines, and this is the one for locomotion, and I'll double-click that, and you're going to see some state machines are more complicated than this one, but each one of these little boxes usually will contain either a single animation asset or something called a blend space, and we're going to see the difference in just a moment. So we have, when she enters this state, they're playing idle animation, and the animation is called an animation sequence. This node is a sequence player. So this is the idle animation, and it just gets connected to this node output animation pose. Now, if I back up a couple of levels, you can see in the same state machine, that there's also this walk-run state. Now, sometimes this is separated out with transitions into two states, like they can be walking or they can be running. But in this case, what's in use is this BS underscore blend space player. A blend space player takes in a variable of whatever the character's speed is and blends two or more animations together based on something like the ground speed. So as the character gets faster, it'll start running, and as the character gets slower, it'll start walking. So that is just all combined in a single blend space, but it could have been separate states inside of the locomotion state machine here. So you might see all kinds of arrows pointing different directions in some more complicated animation blueprint state machines, which is what this is. Okay, so I can close that momentarily, and I can show you what I mean in terms of animation blend spaces and sequences. Inside of the Quinn and Manny folders, you're going to find, I'll just open up Manny here for a second, you're going to find a few things. Like, for example, this MM walk forward stands for male mannequin walk forward. And as you can see by looking at the label, it's an animation sequence. If I double click that to open it, you can see that animation sequence playing. It's being previewed on Quinn, which is interesting, but that's supposed to be the animation for the male mannequin. And that's an animation sequence. But an animation, before I show you the blend space, I'll show you that was walking. This is running. It's a separate animation sequence. All right, so they're not the same. Walk, run. Now, neither of those is being used by itself in the state machine, because what they're using instead is this. It's a blend space. So if we double click on the blend space, you can see that there's a cursor here. And if I hold down Control or Command, I can drag this cursor around, and you can see it's blending between the different animations. This is idle down here, boom, boom, boom. And at this speed, which is 230, you can see it's playing the walk animation, and by the time it reaches 500, it's running, okay? So we're going to have to remember these values for later, or we can double check them again later, 230 and 500. Okay, so now that we know the difference between animation sequences and animation blend spaces, we can close out of that and go back to Quinn's animations right here. So we're going to add the notifies on hers. And if that doesn't work for whatever reason, then we're going to try it on the Manny animations instead. And I think because she is inheriting from Manny, that may have been the reason. But we're going to try this anyway. But first I need to get some footstep sounds into my level. And I do have some. I'll make a new folder, and I'll call it Footsteps, like so. Double-click that, and on one of my external hard drives, I've got a whole bunch of footfall wave files that we've recorded over the years, and I'm just going to drag them all in there. Okay, you can preview them. If you just click on them, you should be able to hear those. Okay. But you'll notice that they all have asterisks, and of course that tells you that they need to be saved. So when you import your WAV files, they're going to look like that. What I'd recommend is just clicking on one of them and then doing either Control-A or Command-A if you're on a Macintosh to do a select all, and then just save them with Control or Command-S. Okay, so now they're all saved. So let's see. These wood ones are okay. Ultimately, what I think I might do is Yeah, maybe even blend some of these together. But we'll make a simple cue first. Yeah, those are kind of quiet, but there are 6 of them. Okay, so let's do this. In the empty space, and by the way, if you need more room in your little window down here, you've got some options. You can either drag this up to make some more space, or if you hold down Control or Command and use the center scroll wheel on your mouse, you can change the scale of folders and icons and things like that. So I'm just going to size that down a little bit to make more room. And I'll right-click in the empty area here, go to Audio, and in this case, I'm going to create something called a sound cue. This is the basic type of audio actor that we use in Unreal for various types of sound effects, including footsteps. So we're going to create that sound cue, and I'm going to call it footsteps _ cue, just like that. Once we have the sound cue, we can open it by double-clicking it and then dock it at the top here. All right, now we can drag in any WAV files that we want to use. So for example, let's start with wood 1 through 4. So I'm clicking the first one and then shift-clicking the last one. Now I'm going to left-click and hold on any of them, still holding down the mouse button, and I'll hover over the footsteps cue and then move into the graph and finally let go of the button. Okay, so there are the 4 wave players. Okay, we'll just move them right here. What I want to do first is randomize these. So if I wanted to, I could bring in this random node, and there are 4 waves here. So it starts off with 2 inputs, and I could add 2 more, and then just plug each one of these in. There is a better way. And that better way is to highlight these first and then bring in the random node, and it will connect them all for you without having to add additional inputs. So we'll take the output from the random node, and we're going to go into the final output, which looks like a speaker on the sound cue. All right, so this is a basic sound cue for footsteps, and I can play it by hitting this play cue button repeatedly. Okay, so hopefully you can hear that. All right, now I'm going to save it. Again, there's the asterisk, so I want to make sure that that's saved. Let's go back. Now that we've got that sound cue, we'll go back into our content directory, and we're going to go into that animation blueprint or animations folder again. Okay, so that's in characters, mannequins, animations. And I'm going to try this just using Quinn's animations first. Let's see if that works. So she's got walk forward and run forward. And I think she's not doing one for, let me see, she's not doing one for jump. I think that one is in Manny's directory. They might share that one. So we'll start with just the run forward. Double click that to open it. And you can just click anywhere, I guess, in this little time area to stop that thing from going. This is just a scrubber, sort of like a cursor. You can scrub forward or backward through this animation sequence. You can also hold down the right mouse button and use the WASD keys to really get a good vantage point to see where the footfalls are taking place. Now, here we have some notifies already, but these are not what you think. These are called sync markers, and they are not used for sound. We're going to be using just regular notifies, or what they're called are skeleton notifies. So we're going to go here where it says track, click that, add notify track. All right. So now I'm going to take my scrubber and I'm going to move my cursor forward until I see the first definite footfall. And I'll hover my mouse right over the middle of that line where the scrubber cursor is, and making sure that I'm on the second notify track so I don't interfere with these sync markers, which are used for something else. Right-click, add notify, and I want to add my own. So I'll click New Notify, and it's going to prompt me to name it. So I'll call it footfall. Like that. Okay, now I'm going to continue scrubbing until I see the next footfall. About there. Add notify. Okay, so what did I do? I moved my cursor, made sure that I was confident about where that footfall is happening. Right-click on it, hover over add notify, and you'll notice that that footfall notify that we made a moment ago is still here in the list. So I'm going to reuse it. So left-click on that, and now that's in the editor. And we'll do this for the remaining footsteps. Add notify, footfall. Add notify, footfall. And by the way, you're going to be tempted to use play sound down here. That's another type of notify. Don't do that, okay? That's going to tie you into always having the same sounding footsteps no matter what you're walking on. And later in your training, you're going to find out that that will limit you compared to this method. We don't want to attach a sound to this directly. We'll need just these generic skeleton notifies later if we want to modify the sounds of the footsteps if the character is walking on a different surface, for instance. So these notifies need to be just generic. Okay, there's the next one. Add notify, footfall. I think she's got one more, like so. Add notify, footfall, like that. Now I'm going to save. Okay, see we've got our asterisk there, so we're going to have to save this blueprint. And let's go back to our map for a moment. What I'm going to do is open up Quinn's animation blueprint, this one, because we just added those notifies to Quinn's run forward animation, right? So we're going to open up her animation blueprint. And this is what should have worked yesterday, and I don't know why it didn't, but we're going to try again anyway. We'll right-click, and we're going to search for that footfall notify event. And if there's more than one thing here that says anim notify with the word footfall, ignore those and just use event anim notify _ footfall. That's the one you want. If you click on the wrong one, you'll have an input execution pin here that won't be populated by anything, and that's not what you need. You need this one that only has the output execution pin. So now what we're going to do is we're going to perform what's called a cast. So we'll drag off this execution wire and type cast to uppercase BP _ third. Okay, and what we want is this, cast to BP _ third person character. And that actor is the name of the blueprint class that is our character. Remember, from third person, under blueprints, BP _ third person character, that's the blueprint class that is the character when we play the game. Okay, so going back to this animation blueprint for Quinn. Every time this fires, based on when the animations are playing, we are going to cast to that character, that third-person character, which is showing up as Quinn. The object pin needs to be populated with a node called try get pawn owner, like so. And we might as well get a permanent reference to our third-person character by promoting it to a variable. So I can right-click on that, promote to variable, and this will set the variable. It'll populate a variable so that anytime I need a reference to this in this particular animation blueprint, I can always drag that in. And with variables, you can either set them or get them. This is a setter. That was automatic when I promoted this to a variable, but I can equally, once I have a variable, if I just need to get information from it, Let's say I needed to get the information such as the speed of the character or something like that. I can use the getter, and then I can do things like get actor location off of that. And that would have been the same as if I just pulled it off of here. It's the same information. It just makes it a little bit more convenient so that you don't have to pull off of this pin every time you need a reference to that particular actor. So since we already have this here, I might as well use it. And then the next node is simple. It's going to be play sound at location. Like that. And that's why I got the location, by the way, of the character right here. So I could plug that into the location field of the play sound at location node. All right. So this should work, but I do have to select the correct asset. Now, I can go back and just find it under footsteps. I made a sound cue. It's this one. Make sure you don't choose the sound wave. You want the sound cue. Highlight that. I'll go back up here and I'll use the use selected asset or use asset browser. Usually it says use selected asset from content browser, but that's what this button always does. So as long as I've got it selected. If I didn't do that, then I would just have to search for it in a big list. But that's the sound that I want to happen when those notifies fire. So I compile and I save and I don't see any errors, which is good. So, and the character defaults to running. So hopefully you can hear that working. Now, I think what I'm going to do is make the sound cue a little bit more interesting before we continue. So let's open up that sound cue once again. It looks like it's still docked, which is good. And I think I'm going to add layers to it. So I think we used the wood first, but we've got these 6 that are just sort of generic. I don't remember what we were walking on. And I'm going to drag them like I did before into this graph and let go. I'll make a little marquee selection there so that I can line them up better. And ultimately, we're going to layer these all together. So I need another randomizer right here. And let's disconnect this by Alt-clicking or Option-clicking. We'll get to that in a moment. Another thing that I like to do before these go to the final output is to use a modulator like this. And what that does is it will give you the ability to have a random range for the pitch and for the volume. You could make these more or less extreme if you want to. I think that the default values, frankly, work pretty well. But if you want to see really what these will do, I would recommend experiment with them a lot and use large and tiny values, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so let's connect this to the modulator, and we need another modulator. So we'll drag another one from palette right down into here. Now we've got 2 outputs, but only 1 input here. So what we need is a mixer, and the mixer also comes with 2 inputs, and I can add as many inputs as I want. And likewise, if I had multiple outputs here and I had them highlighted together, as soon as I drag the mixer in, it would have the correct number of inputs and it would automatically connect it for you. So let's do that. Go like that, and I'm going to add more layers still after this. Okay, now we'll connect that to the final output. And the interesting thing now is that it's going to randomize these, but it's going to randomize these at the same time. And I can use the play node button to listen to each sample separately. Play node. Okay, so these are not quite loud enough, I don't think. All right, so we're going to have to do something about that. In our mixer, let's see here, we're going to say for, that's index 0, that's index 1. This is a volume multiplier, so let's say 2. These are also deeper sounds. Might be harder to hear them. Okay, but if I use the play cue, you're going to hear them in combination. Let's select our mixer again, and I'm going to set the index 0 to 0. Now we're only hearing that second layer. So let's turn this to maybe 0.5 till I have the blend that I like. 0.25 perhaps. Okay, so that sounds a little bit better to me. And let's keep going, okay, because now I don't think the rocks are going to be helpful, but maybe sand. Let's just take these 4 sand samples and add them in just for a little bit of texture. Bring them in, drop them down there. And we'll do the same thing as we have been doing. We'll get a random node, like so, a modulator. And now this mixer needs an extra pin for this layer. So we can just add it, like so, and connect this up like that. Okay? Try not to cross wires if you can avoid it, like that. Okay, now that might be too loud, so let's play the whole cue. Yeah, it's definitely too loud, that sand layer. I just want it to be barely audible. So let's do 0.25 on that as well. Still a little too loud. 0.125. I like that. Little sort of non-specific sounding. Okay, so that would be the sound cue finished. And don't forget to save it. So let's go back into play and see how that feels. Okay, now of course, some of the time it seems out of place because there's a visual discrepancy between the sound of the footsteps and the material that's on the floor. So that's what's happening here. The next thing I'd like to show you is how to make the character also be able to walk instead of always running all the time. And we're going to do a little bit of blueprint scripting to make this happen. So that's going to take place inside of the character blueprint. So we're going to go into our third-person directory, blueprints, and this is the character blueprint right here. We're going to open that up. Now, characters have a special component called the character movement component right here. Not all classes come with this, but the character class does. So for example, let me just make a couple of things that I can throw away here. Go to the content directory. If I make a new blueprint class and it's just an actor, okay? I'm not even going to bother naming this because I'm not going to use it. But if I open it up, there's no character movement component there. Okay, so I would not use an actor class to make a character because it needs that character movement component. So if I make another blueprint, this time of class character, and open that up, you'll notice that it comes with the character movement component, and that's what we're going to be working with primarily in our blueprint here. But first, let me just delete these, because they're not needed. Okay, and we're going to go right back up here. Now, I'm remembering that blend space where the transitions took place between walk and run. Walking took place at a speed of 230, I beg your pardon, and then it was running at 500. So what we can do is we can select the character movement component and find our max walk speed, which is just a little bit farther down in the character movement walking category. And I can see that is the max walk speed. And I remember from looking at the blend space that the cursor for the walking animation sequence was at speed 230. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use what I would call a prototyping input for this to create an event. And I'm going to make it the left shift key, left shift, like so. There's a better way of making inputs, a more official way of making inputs than this, but if you're just prototyping an idea, you can use any key on your keyboard to do it. So off of pressed, I'll pull off that execution pin, and what I want is another node which is called a flip-flop. So I'll just type flip, and then I'll see right here flip-flop. And that means that every time I press the left shift button, it will alternate between these two pins here, okay? So this is one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to use pressed and release. So I can hold down the left shift key when I want it to run, and I can, when I release, it goes back to walking again. I can do it either way. So I'll show you both. Let's start with the flip-flop. And I'm going to just do a print string off of both of these. We'll say running, and on B, we'll do print string again, and we'll type the string walking. Okay? Now, nothing's going to happen yet other than these strings are going to get printed when I press the left shift key. It's going to alternate between these two states. So we'll compile and save, and we'll go into play mode. I'll wait for this to disappear, okay? And now, as I locomote, if I hold down the shift button, running. If I let go, if I press it again, it'll say walking. Walking, running, walking, running, okay? So we know that our execution outputs are firing. We don't need these print strings anymore. Maybe I'll save them for later. Okay. Now what we want to do here is we want to use the character movement component. So I'm going to drag it from the components panel into the graph like this. And I'm going to pull off of it and type set max walk speed. And the run speed defaulted to 500. So I'm going to type 500 in this field. And connect that to A. And I might as well use the print string again right after that so we can see what happens. And then off of the same character movement component, I'll pull off and I'll do it again. Set max walk speed. And this one is going to be set to 230. And I'll also connect the print string for when it's walking, okay? What I would like, though, is to have the character to default, okay? I'm sorry, I forgot to connect the execution pin off of my flip-flop. So I want the character to start at 230, and it's defaulting to 500. So if I click on the character movement component again, and I look under movement walking, you can see that it defaults to 500 centimeters per second. But I don't want it to run by default. I want it to walk by default. So we'll say 230. Okay. It automatically did a conversion for me. I think that's recent in Unreal Engine 5.4. Previously, it would have said 230, and Unreal units are centimeters. So this just made a conversion for me, 2.3 meters per second, which is fine. So we'll compile and save. And then we'll go back into our map. And now, when I start walking, you're not going to hear any sound because remember, we didn't place any notifies for the walking. But if I hold down the Shift key while I'm pressing W, it goes into the running animation. And then if I press the left Shift key again, it goes back to walking. Okay, so that's one way we can toggle running and walking. Another way to do it, frankly, and my preferred way, is not to use a flip-flop, but just to use the pressed and released keys. So this way, if I'm using WASD to move around, I'll be walking by default, right? Because we set that as our default walk speed. Hey, interesting, it converted it back. 230 centimeters per second. That's strange, but anyway, that's how it would normally show up. So it's going to default to walking, but while I'm pressing down WASD, if I'm holding Shift at the same time, the character will run. And if I release the left Shift key, then the character will walk. Okay, so let's see what happens there. I compiled and saved. I will go back into play. Character's walking. Now it's running, and if I let go, it's back to walking. And if I hold down Shift again, we're back to running, okay? So that's a good way to get started with character animation, is using notifies and scripting the events for, things like different kinds of animations or changing properties of a component while the game is running, in this case, to change the walk speed. So it would send that information to the blend space, which is being used in the animation blueprint. So I know it's a little bit abstract, but this is where we would set those parameters, because this is where the character movement component lives. And only with the character movement component can we set the actual forward speed of our character, which is this parameter max walk speed, okay? So we don't need the print strings anymore. It was just fun to have them there. So we'll take those away, and I'll compile and save one more time. And now we have to finish up our sound because when the character is walking, you can't hear the footsteps. So we're going to go back into characters, back into mannequins, back into animations, and into the Quinn folder. Open that up, and we're going to go in walk forward this time, add a notify track. And by the way, we still have our footfall skeleton notifies that we can reuse. So there's the foot down right there. Hover over that line on the correct track, add notify, and it's still in our list, okay? So we're going to reuse that. Add notify, footfall. And if the timing doesn't seem right when you play the game, you can always reopen the animation and, move these forwards or backwards in time if you feel like they're playing early or late compared to what it looks like. Let me see if there's another step. Nope. Okay. So let's save this animation. Animations don't have to be compiled, by the way, just saved. All right. So now the character should be able to have footsteps, whether it's walking or running. So here's the test. Now, I would like for it to have a little bit of sound when it jumps, but especially when it lands. When it jumps and when it lands, okay? So I think because the blueprint for Quinn is a child of Manny, that if I were to add the animations or add the notifies to the animations that are in the Manny folder, I think it will work. I think that this child animation blueprint is going to inherit that from the parent blueprint, which is Manny's. And I know for sure that Manny has jumping animations. So we'll go into mannequins once more, animations. This time I'm going to go into the Manny directory. I don't have to worry about the walking and running because we've already done those for Quinn, but we've got the jump and land right here. Let's do the land first. So as we play that, it's going to be a very short animation, just like that. Boom. Okay, so let's add a notify track. Add notify footfall. And sometimes I like to do, even though you can see the left foot is not really in the air, I like to, because this is where the landing starts, I might want to have a notify like right there at the beginning, because it's going to be transitioning to this animation as soon as it meets the ground. Okay, so I like to have a double footfall there. So we'll save that and we'll listen to it. All right, I can hear that the timing is off, I think, for one of the layers in my sound cue. I don't think that's the notify being off. They just don't sound perfectly aligned in the sound cue. All right, so I might simplify that sound cue. Let's see. Let's go. Maybe, yeah, let's just do a single layer for now because these might have been trimmed very differently. And I can delete these inputs on the mixer. That's by right-clicking, by the way, and I'll save it again. I think that they should sound closer together. So I'll bring this one forward a bit, maybe this one backwards a bit. Save it again until it seems right. That's not bad. That's not bad. I'm going to leave it at that. And maybe one for jumping up. So I'll hit escape, open up the jumping animation. And I know that there's no sound really specifically for that, but we might as well, we could make a different sound cue if we wanted, but I'm just going to do one that's like representative. Make a notify track and add our footfall notify, just so there's some auditory feedback that the character has jumped. Okay. I think that there's a timing issue perhaps at the beginning of the run animation, and we used Quinn's for that. Let's see, run forward. I think the first one might be a little off or too close together. So let's scrub those again. And these notifies actually might be interfering. These are sync markers. Let's just double check. Oh yeah, we do need them after all. That's what links them to the Manny blueprint. Where's that animation? Undo. Okay, so check these out one more time. Another option could have been to have used the animations that are in the Manny folder to add these notifies. because you can see that the sync markers are very close to where I'm putting these down. So it is a possibility that this character is actually using the animation that's for the male mannequin, that's intended for the male mannequin for running purposes. So let's just check this final step. Yeah, that's really belongs all the way down there. Wonder if I can. No, I can't trim that, so. Have it start there. It rounds it off. Okay, so we'll save. See if that's any better. Yeah. I think that's better timing. Okay, so now we know how to make our character walk or run. Here's another bonus while I'm here. Let me see if my character can jump on top of this platform. Just barely not. Right? What if I wanted the character to be able to make it up that high? Let's hit exit and go back to the character blueprint. This also lives in the character movement component, and this will be under the jumping section. And it's this parameter called jump z velocity 700 centimeters per second. I can just make it a larger value. So let's say 1,000. And it did that conversion once more. That's really, really interesting. So I wonder, after I compile it, it goes back to centimeters per second. That's really interesting. Okay, so that's a new feature, must be. So she should be able to jump much higher now. We can make it a crazy number, but if I go up to this ledge and I feel like I need to be able to jump on top of it, now I can make it. So if we wanted to make it really absurd and give her a superpower, we could make that 5,000. Just for demonstration purposes. That's a hell of a jump. Okay? You could actually control that through scripting so that maybe your character gets a buff or a power-up or something like that that gives them the temporary ability to super jump or something like that. And we'll be learning how to script that sort of stuff as we go on. All right? So hopefully now you're comfortable with all of these mechanics. All right? And I would like for you to work on building the same system. Okay? So that's what you're going to work on this week. You can decorate the environment as much as you want with materials from starter content, but at least get the character able to walk and run and jump and land with footstep sounds. And it'd be cool if you could also give the character the ability to jump up on top of these taller portions. And if you feel like experimenting with that super jump, you can just set it to basically any value you want. I bet if I set that high enough, I could jump all the way up into the volumetric clouds that are up there. Okay, I think that they're starting at like 15,000 feet or something. Should I do it as an experiment? Let's see what happens. 15,000. I'll type 16. No, I'll type 15,250. Maybe that'll put me inside of a cloud. I would never do this. But let's see. Jump. Will I get up into the clouds? Looks like I'm going back down again. This will take a while because this would be good for skydiving, I suppose. If I had like a skydiving animation, that would be fun. Okay, and our character is going to land with no injury. I didn't make it up into a cloud, unfortunately. I'm not sure if that can be done, but all right. So if you have any questions or troubles as you're doing this, like I say, we did exactly this in class, and for whatever reason it didn't work, it should have worked. And, what I probably should have done is just exited out that project and started over. It is true that sometimes you can make a project and it has a bug in it. That can happen. So when I experience something weird like that at the beginning, oftentimes I'll just say, well, let me start over, because that was very abnormal that it wasn't playing the sounds, especially considering that we did it exactly the same way. Okay? So you can review this video as many times as you like, and I look forward to seeing you next Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.